when we were talking about how we've used these positive stereotypes or stereotypes to get an advantage. But it creates unreal and unnecessary pressure on that group of people. And if you try to live up to that standard, it's a no-win situation, right? So if you fulfill that negative stereotype, then everyone else who has that idea, they then believe it's true. If you live up to the positive stereotype, if you don't live up to the positive stereotype, right, then that starts to create this feeling of you're a failure. So that's really a no-win situation. Excuse me. Mark, I believe you were, and Martin, you made these points with stereotypes too. They're not valid or factual. And it really does help frame the thoughts and mindsets of the people within that group being stereotyped. It also helps keep the gap of equity and equality. When those people believe these stereotypes to be true, that gap just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, as opposed to making things more equal and more equitable. And lastly, it can cause personal, and we mentioned this, generational trauma by distorting the view of the very group being stereotyped, right? It creates this self-fulfilling prophecy. So you guys, I think everybody, oh, there we go. I think everybody hit on that when we were talking about positive stereotypes, or do they really exist or not? Let me advance. So real quick, hey, Carlos, thanks for joining. Does anyone, did how that affect us? Does that make sense? And if anyone wants to share how they've been affected by stereotypes, I mean, I know we kind of talked about taking advantage of it and it worked to our favor. That's all fine and well. But somebody was about to say something. Michael, okay, go for it.
I'd say a stereotype that I would deal with that's not brought up very often is that I'm adopted. So when I bring that one up to people, especially like when they like to ask me like, where are you from? Like, what's your family like? That's one to really, it's hard to hit on, especially like with me being in a relationship with my girlfriend, and she'll ask me like, do you know anything about your past, like disease-wise, any things like that? And I'm like, I don't, even though I was adopted at a very young age, none of that was really recorded for me as a baby. So that even if I were to go look back on it, I would have to go do like what other people do, going to pay those things online and doing those things that will run all the way back down a tree. But at the same time, it's different when you have to read them than actually just hearing them from your aunts or uncles or great aunts and uncles and things like that nature. So now would I say that one has ever benefited me or not benefited me? I mean, I'll say it's played hand in hand. Just for the way people wanted to approach me or get to know me, or maybe for why I didn't want to approach people or just wanted to stay to myself. Because at the same time, just being within two different dimensions of both a Black and white realm of understanding adoption for my sort of play, was able to really help me understand what the world was, rather than just trying to look at it from a lot of racial or political, sometimes propaganda ways. And there was time when we would think adoption was, played out in a propaganda way. And, we'd have to sit back and have those conversations with my birth mom or with our adopted mom. And at the end of the day, it kind of, at least for that stereotype, that's really not talked about and it's really not common, but I really think it is one that people just kind of let it blow over their heads. So that's where I come with that one. So
no, I appreciate you sharing, and you're in a bit of a unique position being adopted. Do you mind if I say a little bit about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Or do you,
go ahead. Yeah.
Being adopted by a white family, right?
Yeah.
You're in a unique position when we're talking about stereotypes. I believe a lot of those things within your adopted family have been you know, I don't want to say gotten rid of, but you guys don't buy into that, obviously, or you wouldn't
there's
be
some
in your
things,
family. Yeah. But then the outside community, I'm sure, always tries to chisel at your family bonds because what they see is white and black, you know? And that's, so you're in a unique position to really help stop stereotypes, if you will, you know? So I appreciate you sharing, man. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Let me share again.
So I had a comment, Lee.
Sure. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
So,
go ahead.
And I apologize if it's noisy. I'm driving, but
well, be careful, please. Drive safely.
Yep. I'm on hands-free. But the idea of stereotypes also can put undue pressure on those who are victims of those stereotypes. And I'll give you a couple examples. So when I joined the call just now, someone was talking about speaking one way in front of white people and then speaking differently with your peers and your friends and family, right? Basically code switching.
Yes.
One of the biggest stereotypes that we have to overcome all of the time is talking black or talking white, right? So think about this for a moment. I get this constantly throughout my life, my entire life. You talk white. Well, what's talking black? That's a stereotype that I never understood. What's talking black? Does how I talk determine whether I'm black or not? So the really harmful thing about that stereotype is that we buy into it. Many of us buy into that stereotype. So that puts undue pressure on people to try to behave in a certain manner that may or may not be them. So the point that the person was making, and I apologize, I don't recall who it was, but when I joined the call, the point that they were making is, it sounded to me like they were saying they're who they are regardless of who they're talking to. And I've always adopted that stance because I refuse to be one way in one environment and be another way in a different environment, because then you don't know who you really are, right? So
very true. Very true.
That stereotype of talking black is extremely harmful, and I just don't fall victim to it anymore. It's over and done with.
And it's also harmful because it creates the story that, well, you're intelligent if you speak white. You're not intelligent if you speak black. You know?
And there is no definition around those things. No one can ever tell me what's talking black, right?
You're intelligent if you speak articulately.
No one ever can tell me what speaking white is, right?
Right.
So that's the pressure, right? It puts that undue pressure to behave in a certain way, which makes absolutely no sense. We have enough pressure on us every day just living our lives. Why should we be subject to that pressure as well? So that's the point I was making. Stereotypes like that, I live it every day. And actually, I've had white people tell me, you're the whitest talking black person that I know. What the hell does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah, where does that go, right? That go follow that rabbit hole, and how many other stereotypes do they actually believe about you? That's just the surface of what they were trying to say. Mark, I want to take your point a little further. Carlos, welcome to the call, right? The way that we're talking right now about how we speak. Imagine, so I've had the benefit of working on the international stage for the last 10, 13 years. So a lot, the statement that something gets lost in translation, that is actually true. That's not a stereotype. That's not just a euphemism. It is very true. But I want you guys to consider this, right? And Carlos, I'm not trying to single you out here, but because I understand that your first language is not English. So that's why I make this point. How many times as Americans, okay, will we stereotype someone who is speaking broken English? And how many times has your mind gone to, I'm not sure if they understand me, not because they don't understand English, but you might think, oh, they're not as smart. They don't understand what I'm saying. Maybe no one on this call, and hopefully not. But at some point, when someone is speaking broken English, and in the States here, it could be a different dialect. So it could be a Southern drawl or something you can't understand. But in particular, someone who is not a native speaking English person, there are so many stereotypes that get associated with that. In the job that I do now, once I've gotten to learn people's personalities, then I understand even more. Okay, it could be, and Carlos, tell me if I'm wrong, it could be confidence in speaking English. It could be confidence in understanding a joke in English, right? The under just it is so many things that go along with that. Can you speak to that briefly, Carlos, if you like, and if you don't, I don't mean to call you on the spot. Sorry.
No, that's totally okay, Lee. Thank you for calling me or reaching out. I'm really excited to be here, and
thank you.
Yeah, of course. That's not a problem with me because I'm from Peru. Peru is in South America, and I have Japanese bloodline. So I don't look as an average Peruvian. When people just have a first glimpse at me, they think I'm, Japanese or something else. So when I start speaking Spanish and then I start speaking English, it's like, yeah, they just their mind just goes around and, well, what is this guy? Who is this guy? And yep. Actually, I am pretty. I could say like fortunate or how can I say? Thankful because we share this space in one international program where we have so many people from so many countries around the world, and some of them just don't speak English as fluently as you or as a native speaking English speaker. Absolutely. So yeah, I quite understand a little bit of what you're talking about. Since first I was kind of worried or kind of ashamed of speaking in English because I wasn't sure if I was going to be like understood or I was always apologizing myself because please, sorry if I don't let myself understand because English is not my first language. So but thankfully, because we are in a place where everyone is like pretty, I could tell, human oriented, it doesn't matter. I have found amazing people to connect with. And when you talk about authenticity, it's what I really believe that can make us feel connected with others.